just looked at the world around you and thought, none of this makes any sense? Yeah, you are not alone. There's this ancient book, Ecclesiastes, and it's basically a deep dive into that exact feeling. So today, we're going to journey through its final chapters to find the ultimate answer to life's biggest questions, all according to a very wise and very honest king. Let's unpack his final answer together. So our guide for this whole thing is a guy called the Preacher. Most people are pretty sure this was King Solomon, a man who had it all. We're talking wealth, power, and wisdom like no one else. And he spent his entire life trying to find meaning in a world that just felt chaotic and, honestly, unfair. This quote right here, it's kind of the whole problem in a nutshell. The idea that everything is in God's hands is both the source of his frustration and, believe it or not, the key to his final conclusion.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with Solomon's main problem, then we'll look at his observations about life under the sun. After that, we'll dig into the strange paradox of wisdom and check out his practical advice for navigating this crazy world. And then we'll get to the big one, his final, ultimate conclusion.
All right, so what was Solomon's big issue? What was keeping him up at night? Well, he was trying, with all his wisdom, to make sense of a world that, from where he was standing, seemed totally broken and meaningless.
He starts with this one core observation. Life is just packed with contradictions. He looks around and sees that the math just isn't mathing. You know, good people suffer. Wicked people seem to get everything they want. And he's not just complaining here. This is a deep philosophical problem for him. He's looking for a real answer as to why the world works this way.
And this brings us right to the heart of it all. The one thing that truly, deeply bothers the Preacher is the blatant injustice he sees everywhere. It's the theme he just can't let go of.
And wow, this line just perfectly captures his frustration. When he sees this happening, he screams that it's vanity, which is like a puff of smoke, a meaningless vapor. It's here 1 second and gone the next. For him, this is a massive moral crisis. I mean, if the universe itself doesn't reward good and punish evil, then the whole system feels broken, right? Which, of course, leads to the question we've all probably asked at some point. If life is this unfair, if good guys finish last and cheaters prosper, then why bother being good? This is the core tension Solomon is wrestling with, and he's not pulling any punches. Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. See, the Preacher is operating under the sun. That's his phrase for looking at life from a purely earthly point of view, where death is the absolute end. And from that perspective, his advice makes perfect sense. Enjoy life now, find joy where you can, because this is all you get. But look at how that compares to the later New Testament view from the Apostle Paul, who talks about a resurrection. That idea completely changes the game, promising that ultimate justice is coming, along with a joy that lasts forever. This contrast is a huge clue about where Solomon is eventually going to land.
So, okay, if the world's unjust, what about wisdom? Solomon was the wisest man on earth, so surely that's the answer, right? Well, it's complicated. He finds out that even though wisdom is incredibly powerful, it's got some serious limits in a world like ours. I mean, look at this. On the one hand, wisdom is beautiful. It can make a person's face shine. And the quiet words of a wise person carry way more weight than the loud shouts of some fool in charge. But, and this is a big but, he tells this sad story about a poor, wise man who single-handedly saved his entire city. And as soon as the danger passed, nobody even remembered his name. It seems people have a really short memory when it comes to wisdom. And the book paints wisdom and foolishness as being on two totally different teams. Solomon says the heart of the wise person leans to the right, but the fool's heart goes to the left. Now you have to understand, in ancient culture, this symbolism was huge. The right hand was all about strength, honor, and getting things done. The left hand, that symbolized weakness, shame, and failure. They're complete opposites. Okay, so the world is unjust. Wisdom gets ignored. Given all that, what are we actually supposed to do? How does the Preacher say we should navigate all this chaos and just live? Here's a piece of advice that sounds like it could come from a modern-day business coach. If your boss, your superior, gets angry with you, don't just rage quit, don't storm out. The advice is to stand your ground calmly, endure it, and overcome the situation with respect. It's a call for some serious self-control, even when you're facing down pure, unfair anger. And now we get to one of the most famous, and let's be honest, kind of weird-sounding phrases in the whole book. What on earth does it mean to cast your bread upon the waters? Sounds like a waste of a good sandwich, right? Well, not quite. So there are two main ways scholars think about this. The first is basically ancient venture capital. Sending your goods out on ships was a massive risk. You were literally casting your livelihood out on the water. But if the ship came back, the return could be huge. The second interpretation is about radical generosity. Give freely, help people without expecting anything back. It's like you're investing in your community. So in a chaotic world, both taking calculated risks and being radically generous are seen as acts of wisdom. So after this entire journey, after seeing all the injustice, the limits of wisdom, the pure randomness of life, where does this all lead? What is the final takeaway from the wisest man who ever lived? What is the whole point?
And here it is, the moment the entire book has been building towards. This is the final conclusion, where the preacher finally looks beyond the under-the-sun perspective to give us the one answer that ties everything together.
His advice here gets really urgent, and it's aimed squarely at the younger generation. He's practically shouting, remember your creator now, while you're young. Do it before the hard days of old age come, before your body starts to fail and your energy fades. The time to live a life of meaning for God is right now. And so after all that searching, all that philosophy and poetry and pain, it all comes down to this. The preacher boils down the entire purpose of being human into these two simple but incredibly profound actions. This, he says, is the whole duty of mankind. That's it. But let's be super clear about what fear God means, because this is really important. It doesn't mean be terrified of him, like you're hiding from a monster. It means to live with this deep sense of respect and reverence, of awe for who he is. And because of that respect, you align your life with his ways. It's about reverence, not terror. And here it is. This is the mic drop moment that finally answers the problem of injustice that started this whole quest. Why should we do this? Because, in the end, there is accountability. Every single thing we do, even the stuff done in total secret, will be brought into the light. Those scales of justice that seem so broken under the sun, yeah, God's going to balance them perfectly in the end. And that leaves us with one last powerful thought. If ultimate justice is real, if every single deed, good or evil, secret or public, truly matters, well, then our small, unseen actions suddenly have this profound, eternal weight. So it leaves you with a question, doesn't it? What secret act of good, one that no one else will ever see or know about, can you do today?